The boardroom fell silent. The CEO, Mr. Harold Whitman, a billionaire known for his arrogance, slammed his fist on the polished mahogany table. His company was about to lose a multi-billion-dollar deal that had taken years to negotiate. His top executives sat frozen, unable to provide a solution. And then, all eyes turned to a young girl no one expected to speak. Mariah, just 16 years old, dark-skinned, curly hair tied back neatly, wearing her modest school uniform, stood at the back of the room clutching her notebook. She wasn't supposed to be there. She was only the maid's daughter, waiting quietly for her mother to finish cleaning. But now, in front of the most powerful men and women in the city, she took a trembling breath and said words that made the entire room gasp. If you adjust the numbers this way and renegotiate with their partners instead of their competitors, you can save the deal. The room froze. The executives exchanged bewildered looks, and Mr. Whitman's jaw tightened as he realized the solution to his billion-dollar problem had just come from the girl he once dismissed as nothing more than a maid's child. Before we dive into how this jaw-dropping moment came to be, make sure you're subscribed. We share powerful stories like this every week, stories that remind us that sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest solutions. And now, let's rewind. Mariah grew up in the shadow of wealth. Her mother, Gloria, worked as a live-in maid for Mr. Whitman, one of the richest CEOs in the city. While Gloria scrubbed floors and polished silver, Mariah often sat in the corner, quietly reading borrowed textbooks or scribbling notes in a tattered notebook. She dreamed of one day studying business and mathematics, but those dreams felt impossible. Mr. Whitman never hid his disdain for her presence. "Mariah," he once sneered, "don't waste your time with those books. Girls like you end up cleaning houses, not running companies." The words cut deep, but they also lit a fire inside her. Every insult, every dismissal, only fueled her determination to prove him wrong. What Mr. Whitman never realized was that Mariah listened. She overheard board meetings while sweeping the floors. She studied charts left on the dining table. She even solved equations executives struggled with, though she kept those solutions to herself. She was invisible to them until the day came when the empire began to crumble. Whitman Enterprises was on the brink of collapse. A billion-dollar merger with an international tech giant was falling apart. The numbers weren't adding up, investors were pulling out, and whispers of fraud loomed over the company. Mr. Whitman, furious and desperate, called an emergency meeting. The best financial minds in the company sat in that boardroom, but none could provide a solution. Charts, graphs, and endless debates filled the air, but the problem remained unsolved. Mariah had been sitting in the hallway, waiting for her mother. Her notebook balanced on her knees, she sketched out the numbers she overheard through the door. She saw what the experts missed, a flaw in their approach and a hidden opportunity they ignored. Her heart raced. Should she say something? She was just a maid's daughter. Who would listen? And then came the breaking point. Mr. Whitman shouted, "If none of you can solve this, we're finished!" The room went silent. That was when the door creaked open and Mariah stepped inside. Gasps filled the room. "What is she doing here?" one executive hissed. "She's just the maid's daughter," another muttered. Mr. Whitman glared. "Mariah, this is no place for you. Go back to your books and childish dreams." But Mariah didn't move. She clutched her notebook tighter, her voice trembling but firm. "I know how to fix it." The room erupted in laughter. Executives shook their heads, some rolled their eyes, but then she walked to the whiteboard. With shaky hands, she drew a simple diagram, explained the flow of numbers, and highlighted the miscalculation they had overlooked. She proposed a renegotiation strategy, bold, unorthodox, but brilliant. As she spoke, the laughter faded.
Executives leaned forward, pens scribbled notes, and slowly, even Mr. Whitman's smug expression began to crack. Could it be possible? Could this teenager really have seen what dozens of experts had missed? Minutes later, silence fell over the boardroom again. Everyone stared at the whiteboard filled with Mariah's notes. One executive whispered, "She's right." Another added, "This could actually work." All eyes turned back to Mr. Whitman. His face burned with a mix of anger and disbelief. This wasn't supposed to happen. The girl he had mocked, the child of the maid he had disrespected, had just saved his empire. And yet, instead of gratitude, he clenched his fists. You don't belong here," he muttered, trying to dismiss her. But it was too late. The executives weren't looking at him anymore. They were looking at her. The underdog had become the hero. That day, Mariah proved that brilliance has no social class, no uniform, no boundaries. She showed that even the most overlooked person can hold the key to changing everything. But as she left the boardroom, holding her mother's hand tightly, she didn't know that her life was about to change forever. Because while Mr. Whitman fumed in silence, one of the company's biggest investors had been watching her closely, and he wasn't about to let a mind like hers go unnoticed. So what do you think? Should Mariah's gift be recognized, or will Whitman try to bury her brilliance out of pride? Let us know in the comments below.
The boardroom was still buzzing from the shock. Executives whispered to one another, scribbling notes from Mariah's whiteboard sketch like it was gold. But as Gloria gently pulled her daughter out of the room, Mr. Whitman's face turned red with rage. He had just been embarrassed in front of his entire team by a girl he never even considered worth a second glance. But someone else in that room saw something far greater. Seated near the far end of the table was Elliot Grant, one of the company's largest investors. A man in his early 60s, with silver hair and calm, watchful eyes, Elliot was no ordinary shareholder. He had built and sold 3 companies in his lifetime, and he knew genius when he saw it. As the boardroom dissolved into frantic chatter, Elliot's eyes followed Mariah until the door closed behind her. Then slowly, he leaned back in his chair, a smile tugging at his lips. "This changes everything," he whispered under his breath. But not everyone agreed. Mr. Whitman snapped at the board. "Forget whatever nonsense she said. We'll handle this our way." But the executives looked uneasy. Some nodded, but others exchanged doubtful glances. They had seen the truth on that whiteboard, and they knew who had drawn it. Mariah clutched her notebook, her heart racing. Her mother, Gloria, looked terrified. "Sweetheart, why would you do that? He'll fire me for sure," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. Mariah lowered her gaze. I couldn't stay quiet, Mama. I knew I could help, even if no one listened." Gloria hugged her tightly, but deep down, fear gnawed at her. They needed this job. They couldn't afford to anger Mr. Whitman. But at that very moment, Elliot Grant quietly slipped out of the boardroom and followed them. "Mariah," a calm voice called. They both turned, startled. It was Elliot. He approached with measured steps, a soft smile on his face. "Sir, I'm sorry," Gloria stammered, already bracing for the worst. She didn't mean to—" But Elliot raised his hand gently. "No need to apologize. In fact, I should be thanking her." Mariah blinked in confusion. "Thanking me?" Elliot crouched slightly, bringing himself eye level with the young girl. "What you did in there? It was extraordinary. You saw what seasoned experts could not. Do you realize the magnitude of that?" Mariah clutched her notebook tighter. I just like numbers. They make sense to me." Elliot chuckled softly. "Numbers may make sense, but it takes brilliance to see what others can't, and you, Mariah, have that gift." He pulled a sleek business card from his jacket and placed it gently in her hand. If Mr. Whitman doesn't value you, I will. Call me. Back in the boardroom, Whitman stormed out to find Elliot speaking with Gloria and Mariah. His voice boomed through the hallway. "What do you think you're doing, Elliot?" The entire staff froze as the billionaire CEO marched forward, his eyes blazing. "She's just a maid's daughter," Whitman barked, pointing at Mariah. "She doesn't belong in our affairs, and she certainly doesn't deserve your attention." Elliot didn't flinch. Instead, he turned calmly toward Whitman, his voice steady. "Harold, maybe that's the problem. You've been so blinded by pride that you can't recognize genius when it's standing in front of you." The hallway went dead silent. Even Gloria gasped. No one had ever spoken to Harold Whitman that way. Whitman's fists clenched, his face pale with fury. "You'll regret this, Elliot." But Elliot only smiled, his eyes glinting with certainty. "No, Harold. The only one who's about to regret anything is you." That night, Gloria and Mariah sat at their tiny kitchen table staring at Elliot's card. Neither knew what to think. Could this really change everything? Or had Mariah just put her mother's job and their only stability in jeopardy? Meanwhile, at Whitman Enterprises, the executives buzzed. Some whispered about Mariah's brilliance, others feared Whitman's temper. But all knew one thing: the company's future now hung in the balance of a girl they had once ignored. And so, the stage is set. A maid's daughter with a gift that could save an empire, a proud CEO desperate to bury her brilliance, and an investor who sees her true worth. The question is, whose vision will shape the future? Should Mariah trust Elliot Grant, or is this just another trap? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
The following morning, the tension in Whitman Enterprises was electric. Rumors spread like wildfire. The janitor's daughter, the whiteboard, Elliot Grant's smile. Every employee whispered about it, but no one dared say it too loudly, not with Mr. Whitman storming through the hallways like a thundercloud. But while Whitman seethed, Elliot Grant made his quiet move. That evening, as Gloria folded laundry in their small living room, a black town car pulled up outside their modest apartment. Neighbors peeked through their curtains, whispering. And then, a knock. Mariah opened the door, and there stood Elliot Grant himself. "Good evening," he said with a warm smile. "I hope I'm not intruding." Gloria nearly dropped the shirt in her hands. "Mr. Grant? What are you doing here?" Elliot stepped inside gently, lowering his voice. "I had to see you both. There's something important I must ask." He turned to Mariah, his eyes filled with intent. "Mariah, the board is about to make a critical decision on a new strategy. Whitman wants to push through his plan. But if they follow him, the company will collapse within a year. I believe you can help us find another way." Mariah's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm just a kid." Elliot shook his head firmly. "You're not just anything. You see solutions where others see problems. I want you to help me draft a counter-strategy before the next board meeting." Gloria's face paled. "No, absolutely not. She's just a child. This is dangerous. If Mr. Whitman finds out—" But Elliot leaned forward, his voice calm but resolute. "Gloria, listen to me. Whitman is afraid because he knows she's right. That's why he's desperate to silence her. But if we succeed at the board meeting, he won't be able to touch you." Mariah looked between her mother and Elliot, her heart pounding. For the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible. She mattered. Slowly, she nodded. "I'll do it." For the next week, Mariah worked in secret with Elliot. Every evening after Gloria's shift, Elliot would send a driver to pick them up and bring them to his private study. There, surrounded by walls of books and data reports, Mariah sketched out solutions with a sharpness that stunned even Elliot. She broke down financial risks, mapped supply chain flaws, and even redesigned entire systems on scraps of paper. Elliot's advisors watched in awe as the girl, barely 16 years old, solved problems teams of executives had struggled with for months. Elliot leaned back one night, smiling at her work. "Mariah, do you realize what you've done? You've not only saved the company, you may have just reinvented the industry." Mariah blushed, ducking her head. "I just don't like when things don't add up." Gloria, watching from the corner, could hardly believe it. Her daughter, the girl people dismissed as the maid's child, was outthinking billionaires? But Harold Whitman wasn't blind. He noticed Elliot's late-night meetings, the hushed phone calls, the subtle shift in loyalty among board members. And when he overheard one secretary whisper the name Mariah, his face twisted with rage. "The maid's daughter again. She thinks she can outshine me? I'll crush this nonsense before it spreads." The next day, Whitman summoned Gloria into his office. His voice was cold, measured. "I've been generous keeping you here all these years, but I hear troubling rumors. Your daughter, interfering where she doesn't belong." Gloria froze, her throat going dry. Whitman leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Tell her to stay away, or else you'll both regret it." That night, Gloria confronted Elliot in his study. "You promised to protect her. Whitman knows. He threatened us." Elliot placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Gloria, listen to me. Whitman is afraid because he knows she's right. That's why he's desperate to silence her. But if we succeed at the board meeting, he won't be able to touch you." Mariah looked at her mother with pleading eyes. "Mama, please, I can do this. For you, for us." Gloria's heart ached. She had spent years scrubbing floors and wiping tables so her daughter could dream bigger. And now, against all odds, Mariah had a chance to prove herself. Finally, Gloria sighed. "All right, but if Whitman comes after you, I'll take the fall." Elliot shook his head. "No, Whitman's empire is about to crumble, and when it does, he'll be the one answering for his pride." The day of the board meeting arrived. Executives shuffled nervously into the grand conference room, files in hand. Whitman entered like a king taking his throne, his smug smile hiding the storm inside. But then the doors opened again. Elliot Grant walked in, followed by Gloria and Mariah. Gasps filled the room. Whitman's eyes went wide with fury. "What is she doing here?" Elliot smiled calmly. "She's here because she holds the key to this company's future." Mariah stepped forward, clutching her notebook. For a moment, silence filled the room. The underdog, the maid's daughter, facing down the most powerful man in the company. And just like that, the stage was set for a battle no one could have predicted. A CEO's pride against a child's brilliance. But when the first words are spoken, the entire empire will shake. What happens next will leave you speechless.
The boardroom had never been so tense. On one side of the long mahogany table sat Harold Whitman, CEO of Whitman Enterprises, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with rage. He had ruled this company for decades, silencing opposition with intimidation. On the other side stood Mariah Lewis, the maid's daughter, barely 12 years old, clutching a small notebook. Every whisper in the room carried the same disbelief. How could a child possibly challenge Harold Whitman? But then Mariah raised her head, and the room fell silent. Mariah walked to the front of the room, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice clear and steady. She flipped open her notebook and began to speak. "Whitman Enterprises is standing on a cliff," she said, pointing to a chart Elliot had prepared behind her. "Your current strategy will cut costs now, but it will also cut your future in half. In less than a year, your revenue streams will collapse, but there's another way." The board members leaned forward. Whitman scoffed loudly, but no one looked at him. Mariah continued, explaining complex problems with simple clarity: supply chains, investment patterns, new partnerships. With every word, the old men and women around the table saw what Whitman couldn't. This girl wasn't guessing. She knew. And when she sketched her alternative strategy, even the skeptics nodded slowly in agreement. Whitman slammed his hand on the table, standing abruptly. "This is ridiculous," he roared. "You're letting a janitor's child, lecture us on billion-dollar decisions? This is an insult to everything we've built." He turned toward Gloria, sneering. "And you, this is your doing, bringing your daughter into places she doesn't belong. Do you think scrubbing my floors qualifies her for the boardroom?" Gloria lowered her eyes, but Elliot stood. His voice was calm, but sharp. "Careful, Whitman. That so-called child just pointed out flaws your team missed for months. Maybe the real insult is your pride blinding you to the truth." The board members murmured in agreement. Whitman's face flushed red. But then it happened. Mariah closed her notebook and looked directly at Whitman. "You said I don't belong here, but the truth is, you're the one who doesn't belong anymore. Because a leader who can't see the future doesn't deserve to lead." The words hung in the air like thunder. The room went silent. And then, Investor Lang, one of the most influential voices on the board, slowly stood. "She's right," Lang said firmly. "Whitman, you've been reckless for too long. Elliot's alternative strategy, supported by this young lady's insights, is the only viable path forward." He turned to the rest of the board. "It's time we vote." The vote was swift. One by one, hands rose in favor of the new strategy. Whitman watched in horror as his empire slipped from his grasp. His allies shrank back, unwilling to tie themselves to his sinking ship. Finally, the chairman announced the result. Effective immediately, Harold Whitman is removed as CEO. Gasps echoed across the boardroom. Whitman staggered, his face pale. You can't do this." Elliot stepped forward, his eyes unflinching. "It's already done. Your reign of fear ends today." And as security entered to escort Whitman out, his gaze landed on Mariah. Hatred burned in his eyes. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You'll regret this." Mariah met his glare without flinching. For the first time, the girl who was underestimated, ignored, and dismissed stood tall. In that moment, the entire boardroom realized something profound. Wisdom doesn't always come from power, age, or titles. Sometimes it comes from the most unexpected places, if only we're humble enough to listen. Harold Whitman lost everything, not because he lacked resources, but because he lacked humility. But just as the dust settled, the story took a chilling turn. That night, as Gloria and Mariah walked home, a black car slowed to a stop beside them. The window rolled down, and there, sitting in the back seat, was Harold Whitman. His smile was cold, his eyes glinting with menace. "You think you've won?" he said quietly. "This was just the first round, and I promise you, I don't lose twice." The car pulled away, leaving mother and daughter frozen on the sidewalk, their victory suddenly shadowed by fear. And so the maid's daughter, who everyone underestimated, not only exposed the truth, she toppled a billionaire right from his throne. But as Whitman's dark smile lingered in the night, one question remained. Is this truly the end, or just the beginning of something more dangerous? What do you think, viewers? Should we continue this story and see what Whitman does next? Or should Mariah's victory remain the final word? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because sometimes the quietest voices carry the greatest power.